Hey everyone, and welcome to ABA and MIA, where real talk meets real practice. I'm Karelix.
And I'm Mariam, and we're here to break down ABA, autism, and the everyday life of the 305.
With clarity, compassion, and a little Miami spice. So grab your cafecito and let's get into it. All right, everyone. So today we thought it would be helpful to talk about all the different locations in which ABA therapy can take place for our kiddos. There are quite a few, and it all really depends on the child's need, right? We really take into account and we take great pride in rendering services wherever the child needs us. Wherever they need us, we will be there. So Mariam, why don't we start off with, I think, a very common one, which is like the home setting. Can you tell our listeners what ABA therapy in the home setting could look like? And then maybe we can talk about maybe the pros and the cons.
Yeah, of course. So, home therapy, it's basically, the RPT goes out to the house and the BCBA will be there as well, supervising on a weekly basis. And how that setting is that in the beginning, before we start our therapy, we usually do an assessment based on what the parent wants to prioritize on the goals. If it's either, the daily routines that you guys have at the house, or it's something like a structured activity that you want to do at the home. You want to incorporate it like a visual schedule and having like a consistency of transitioning from one, routine to another. Another thing is maybe being more interactive with your the client's, siblings or anyone in the household, having some interaction there. Because I know the most common thing is siblings are not getting along. So creating goals like that. Another thing could be something like homework. I know we're not allowed to, collect data on homework because most insurances won't cover that. But there's ways that we can kind of incorporate goals behaviorally that allows the child to kind of, focus on, sitting and attending. Things like, following direction, being able to comply and being able to sustain their attention for a certain amount of duration sitting down. So there's specific goals that you can kind of incorporate at the house versus other settings you cannot. And most of the time when we do work on like home therapy, we're doing a lot more hands-on parent training. This allows the child and the parents to be more, involved in their therapy sessions. Parents are like able to observe to see like what we're doing. It's funny because the other week we were doing supervision and the mom was like, "Oh, I was observing for like an hour and I already got what you guys were doing, and I'm actually like incorporating the same thing as you guys are doing." So that's great that the parents are more like, observing, seeing what we're doing, versus other settings. It's kind of hard for parents to kind of look at that and kind of incorporate what we're doing. But a lot of times it's much more easy for the child to like naturally generalize what they're learning at the home because it's their natural environment, and then hopefully transferring it to other environments. The only thing I would say for home therapy, it's kind of a struggle, and I'm sure a lot of supervisors and BCBs go through it. It's the limitation of peer interaction. That's a lot on the parent to kind of have play dates, and it's very hard for a parent to be like, "Hey, do you want your kid and my kid to come together?" And especially some parents are uncomfortable having other parents in their house, and there's a, like, a kid from their class and they don't feel comfortable bringing them in or things like that. So I feel like that setting, in the home setting, you're really limited with peer interaction.
Yeah. I love everything you mentioned. I mean, I feel like there's so much to say about the home setting. It is a wonderful location, the perfect location to work on natural environment training, to teach the child, for example, to say couch when it's his own couch at home, to say bed when it's his own bed at home, to say, I want, bread, or I want cracker, or whatever, when it's his own kitchen, it's his own natural environment, or her own natural environment. I think there's something really beautiful in the parents and the siblings and maybe grandma or grandpa who are around to really see that learning taking place firsthand. They're a witness to it every single day. I think that's a really beautiful aspect of home-based ABA therapy sessions. Everybody, it's like a community effort. Everybody's there, everybody's listening, everybody's watching, everybody can take turns kind of practicing with the child. So like you were saying, generalization is built in a very natural way. It's not like tabletop work, and it's not like dropping your kid off somewhere to get therapy and then you come back hours later, don't really know what's happening. You have to ask a lot of questions. You have to wait to see the written report. There's a lot less wondering, right? I also, from the family's perspective, it's very convenient, right? The therapist goes to you. You don't have to be worried about being stuck in Miami traffic going anywhere. And you don't have to worry about, your child's problem behavior in the back seat. If they have trouble tolerating car rides, you don't have to worry about gas mileage, all these things. I've also heard that some families can find it a little bit intrusive in the beginning. Like, oh, wow, someone coming into my house every day. I just want to be in my pajamas. I've had a long day at work, and, I just want to be in my bunny slippers, and I'm cooking dinner, and I'm trying to help with the homework. And, I have 3 kids, and it's kind of like one added little component to your afternoon schedule as a parent. And so, we always try to be very mindful of that, very respectful of the home environment, take cultural perspectives and into account, so that it's not as shocking. And it's obviously something that the whole family gets used to, because when a child needs therapy, the entire family is involved, especially when it's in the home setting. And so, yeah, I think those are the main points that I wanted to maybe share with our audience. What do you think? Is there anything else we want to touch on?
Yes, like you kind of said with cancellations. I've noticed, I used to work in boat settings, so I've noticed there's a lot of cancellations at the home setting. I'm not sure, based on maybe because it's a few hours in the house, and kind of like what you said, I just want to relax. I don't want the therapist there. I'm uncomfortable, or they have plans, they're doing something with, family members and they don't want them there, or, there's a lot of uncomfortableness sometimes. So I've noticed at the clinic, it's much easier because they just drop them off and they have a long hour of, sessions, and it's much more consistent. I feel and especially with the RBTs too, I feel sometimes they're oh, they're uncomfortable in the home setting versus more clinical base. It's less contact with the parent, because I feel they feel uncomfortable. Sometimes the parent puts you in a situation, hey, do you want to go eat? Or do you want a snack or something? Or do you want water? Things like that. And you're kind of uncomfortable, answering those questions. Right. Or they're asking personal questions like, what did you do this weekend? So there's a lot more rapport building, versus at the clinic. I feel the RBTs are less contact with the parents. It's more they focus on that one-to-one, which is what they're supposed to be doing. And then there's more communication with the scheduling team or the BCBA with the parent versus any interaction with the RBT.
Yeah, that's a really good point you're bringing up. Very, very good point. I also think maybe it's worth mentioning kids who are homeschooled versus kids who just get ABA therapy after school. So Obviously younger kiddos, if they're diagnosed at 2 or 3 years old, they can get home-based ABA therapy. But what happens? Usually we're not allowed to be in the home alone with a child. So that's a kind of a burden on the family sometimes if there is no stay-at-home mom or dad, right? Is there has to be a responsible adult present in the home at all times for liability purposes, obviously. And so that can sometimes be draining. Like if mom is like, oh, I really don't want to cancel therapy. However, I do have very important errands to run, or I have to do all of these things outside the home. Like you were mentioning, it can definitely lead to a lot more cancellations. Sometimes also like when there's someone else in the household sick with a communicable disease, we can sometimes have cancellation there. So as far as continuity of care, the home setting can definitely be a little more fragile in that sense for sure. But then sometimes our kids get home-based ABA therapy after school hours. These are kids who are already like in elementary, middle school, or high school. They'll wait to finish their school day. Then they come home and have 2 or 3 or 4 hours of ABA therapy after that. So they can have really long days. I guess you have to consider like, how many more hours of structured activities can this child take developmentally, like based on their individual capacity and their level. But then there are kids that are homeschooled.
Yeah.
And homeschooled kiddos, there are so many different ways to homeschool. Some parents just take it upon themselves to handle it. Some moms are like, hey, I used to be a school teacher, and when I had my child, I saw that, I tried him out at 3 different schools. None were a really good fit, so I just decided to keep him home. Some parents homeschool via the Florida online virtual school system that there is. And some parents choose to homeschool at a full-time like ABA therapy center. So it's kind of a way of merging merging that. Sometimes they do part-time at home, part-time at an ABA therapy center. There are a lot of different ways to do that, but I guess we wanted to communicate to you all that there are many different ways to get like ABA services in the home setting, many times of the days, many different schedules, and you can work that out with your provider as needed.
Yeah, great point you made. I know like a lot of people are asking the difference, like, should I do home therapy or clinical therapy? Like, what's the big difference? Going back to what you were saying, it all depends on what the child needs, right? At that stage of their life.
Yeah.
So there's also, you can start out home therapy because there's some kids that start out early age when they're diagnosed like at 1.5, at 2, just to kind of see what's going on, just build that rapport, and the RBT is a little bit more comfortable. And then eventually mom says, hey, we need to prepare him for school.
Yeah.
Or we need more peer interaction because I've like noticed he's doing so great with language, communication, but he's not doing that towards other people. Right. He's not generalizing that with new people. I would like my child to work with new people. I would like him to be exposed with kids. I've not seen the social aspect. I haven't seen that improved. We're at the home setting. So what should we do next? So for a clinical setting, I feel like a lot of centers base it on early intervention. Yeah. And what that means is that they're preparing them for school. They're preparing not just social stuff, more transitioning, more of a setting of like looking like school, but then they still get that one-to-one, communication, whatever skill they're working on. Like if it's, requesting, labeling, answering WH questions. So it all comes on, okay, we're going to do the one-to-one in the morning. And then from there, we're going to start incorporating circle time. What does that circle time look like for, a kids? So we're going to have all the kids together. So it's going to be kind of like a school-based but there's more interaction with the peers. And it's more natural, less, structured. Let's just go to the table and do work. More like, okay, well, we're going to play a game with our peers. We can incorporate programs while we're playing kind of thing too. So it all depends on every company's, idea of what they want their therapy to be, if it's NET, DTT, some people do both. Um, so the clinical setting is definitely a place I feel like if you want your child to have more social interaction goals, be in a group setting, work in a group setting to prepare them for school. And then sometimes they are in school. What's next? And they're like, okay, well, they are getting, they're graduated from, the ABLES or the VB map, right? And all the communication looks great, but we still want to work on that social skill. So there are clinics for high functioning kids, the aftercare program, which some clinics have, where after school they get dropped off and they work on one-to-one programs, but it's a lot of focus on peer play again. So it all depends, but I feel like I don't know if from your experience, I think the clinical base is great. Yeah. When it comes to social skills. However, parent involvement, you're kind of limited because you're less contact with the parent is not informed as much because at the home, you kind of give them a follow-up or they observe and they see what's going on. So there's less communication there. You could still have parent training in the clinical setting, but there's still less involvement, I feel like, unless you're really doing parent training on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point you bring up. And this is a concern that I hear from a lot of parents, especially younger ones. There tends to be a huge focus on academics in general and school readiness in general. I mean, I hear parents like even talking about, yeah, he knows his ABCs and he can count to 100 and he's 2, but he can't make eye contact. He doesn't respond to name. He's not speaking in full sentences. And it's like, well, let's take a step back a minute, right? Because developmentally, our kiddos have a lot of what are called splinter skills. They'll be really high functioning in some areas and really low functioning in other areas, or they have a lot of improvement needed in other areas. And so what we like to do in center-based ABA and home-based ABA is really fill in those gaps. So we call them basic learner skills, or in other words, like learning how to learn skills. Like, how do I learn how to learn? Well, first of all, your child has to be able to imitate. If your child, a lot of learning from neurotypical children, like a part of normal development, is being able to imitate. They need to be able to imitate gross motor skills, big movements of the arms and the legs. They need to be able to imitate fine motor skills, movements of the fingers. They need to be able to imitate their vocal musculature. So they need to be able to like stick their tongue out on command or purse their lips on command or open their mouth on command, right? Because they watch someone do it first and then they can imitate. Imitation is a huge early learner skill. Following single step instructions is another early learner skill. Your child is not going to be able to thrive in a group setting if they're not able to master these skills one-on-one. And so I think a lot of parents are like, well, why don't we just go straight to preschool, right? Because kindergarten's coming and I want them to be able to read. And it's like, okay, that's definitely important, but there's a time and a place for that, right? Like childhood is childhood is childhood. They're never going to get these years back, right? Like what should a 1-year-old be doing? What should a 2-year-old be doing? Not necessarily drilling math and science or reading or anything just yet. What are they doing? They're building relationships. They're learning how to make eye contact. They're learning how to initiate social interaction. They're learning how to respond to social interaction. They're learning to point when they want something. They're learning to communicate with gestures. They're learning to share with a sibling. If there's no sibling at home, center-based therapy is great for that, so they can learn to share with the other children that are in the therapy center. So oftentimes when a parent kind of wants to rush the schooling in, I say, wait. Let's think about this. At the end of the day, you're the parent and you can make the decision. But ultimately, developmentally, there are so many layers that have to set that foundation so that the child can ultimately succeed in kindergarten. And I sometimes give the advice like, hey, maybe even like prolonging the start of kindergarten can be really beneficial for our kids, because if you think about it, usually if they're lucky, a child will get diagnosed with autism when they're 3-4 years old. Many times they're not even speaking in full sentences, and so they're already 1, 2, 3, 4 years behind developmentally in comparison to their same aged peers. So if you take that time, those precious childhood years that they're never going to get back, and you focus on play-based learning to fill those foundational gaps, chances are when they do start kindergarten, they might be able to start on their own. They might not need a full-time RBT there because you took advantage of that early childhood when neuroplasticity is really at the ultimate high, right? And so I always say, you can rush services in the beginning, but I think the location you choose for your child can really make a huge difference. For example, we have clients that the family, you have this talk with the family and they're like, okay, well, we've decided on this preschool, and you deliver services in the preschool, but then what happens? Services in the preschool or the school setting or the daycare setting can sometimes be really restrictive. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Mariam?
For preschool settings, I feel like it like kind of like what you mentioned, that it's kind of hard to do like one-step instruction when you can't do it in a group setting.
Mm-hmm.
So some preschools are accommodating. I feel like they would let the child go, at least maybe if it's something like the child does not have that skill. Like, for example, they do circle time, and our kids are like completely lost. Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
Like, what are you guys doing? And they don't even have any of the skills of attending, raising their hand, answering questions in a story, things like that. It's just they got the basic skills. So in that time, teachers would, it depends on the school too. Like if they're very flexible, they can say, hey, you guys can go work in another room while we do this, because right now he does not have the skills.
Right.
So once he does have the skills, then we can bring him to circle time and kind of work on those skills. Also, teachers being able to kind of following through or understanding like our feedback, because sometimes I feel like teachers don't want us there. They're kind of like, I don't need you to tell me what to do, because I've been in this business forever. I've worked with kids forever. I don't need you to tell me what to do. I know how to handle my classroom. So you get those type of teachers, and then you get the teachers that are like, oh, I love feedback. I want to learn more, and I want to kind of make a difference in this child's life, because I really don't have the experience working with a kid with autism, and there's not that much education for teachers. And I know some schools in the Miami public system have been giving training to teachers, ABA.
Yeah.
But it's like, maybe I would say like a course that's like 6 hours long or something like that. And a lot of teachers say, oh, I'm certified. I have behavioral therapy experience. And I'm like, and it upsets me in an IEP meeting. And I'm like, hey, I've had so much years to work for my BCBA, and you're saying you're behaviorally training these kids. They don't need ABA. We have experience. We have training for 6 hours. I'm like, that's not going to teach you anything. So going back to that, I feel like a lot of teachers are dismissive with ABA therapy, but now with what's going on in Florida, they're allowed to allow RBTs to go in. They're being a little bit more submissive to it. But we still really need to build that rapport building in order to build that relationship with those teachers. And sometimes it's not their fault either, because I get teachers that are like, oh, are you going to be on your laptop all day? are you gonna just observe because we could do that? We don't need your help with that. We actually need you to be hands-on. Like you need to do something with the client and versus just sitting and observing. So they've seen the bad ABA and they've seen the good ABA. So it's just getting that more hands-on experience with the teacher, prepping and into that preschool environment. So going back to the clinic setting, let's just say our kid is done with the clinic setting, home setting. We don't need him to be in the home setting, but there are cases where a client will come back to us and say, oh, I know they graduated, but he's really struggling in high school or middle school and he's having behaviors with his peers. He's not listening, to the teacher. They've been having a lot of trouble kind of developing that instructional control. Would you guys be able to come out there and help my child? And so it all now depends on, the school allowing us to be there. And then once we get permission and we fill out the forms and things like that, the RBT is basically shadowing the client. Basically, anywhere your kid goes, the RBT is right behind them. And when there's like instructional, following instructions, or the teacher's asking, everyone in the classroom to do something, the RBT tries to fade out a little bit. But if we notice that your child is struggling, then we'll go in there and jump in. For the most part, it's just always backing away in the beginning and then trying to be going hands-on. And I feel like it's been working a lot more with our high functioning kids. They benefit a lot more. They need less prompting, but they still need someone to kind of coach them like, hey, let's pay attention. What are we working for? Hey, did you forget this? So they just need someone to kind of consistently redirect them, but eventually that will fade out. And in most cases, some of our clients will kind of be more comfortable understanding the routine and like what they're there for. And some of the kids at school, they're like, who are you as an RBT? And you're like, you don't want to address that. And you're just kind of like, oh, you're just, helping. We're just aides or whatever. But for the most part, I feel like our kids get more confident when we're there. Because one day there was a therapist that was absent on that day in the playground, and he never attempted to play with the kids. And so when the RBT came in, he's like excited, like, hey, can we go play with those kids? Aww. And so it boosts up his confidence. Like, what do I do? How do I approach them? And so it gives us like a sense of pleasure that they're doing something, they're socializing at the same time. We're still building that independence. We don't want them to depend on us all the time being there. Yeah. But I feel like that's what therapy does look like at at a school setting. Yeah. So, I know there's other BCBAs out there. I've done it in the past where I would consult with the teachers on like a weekly basis. I would just go out there as a BCBA, not the RBT, and kind of consult with them and how to approach the behavior and follow up on like, have they been collecting data on ABC data, or in general, a specific behavior that they want to decrease. And then we kind of follow up with that. So there's ways like that to go in a school setting. I don't know. Do you want to touch base on more?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much to be said about the school setting. You certainly covered a lot of it. Another thing that comes to mind is how services can really vary from one school to the next, really. By law, all Miami-Dade County and Broward County public school systems have to allow an RBT on their grounds if it's medically necessary, right? And it's written into the IEP and all of that. It's strange, though, because so many, with the recent changes in the school structure here in South Florida, a lot of families are opting for charter schools and for private schools. And there's a lot of pressure being put on the school system that I hear a lot about as an administrator. And part of that has to do with like, wow, well, now that by law we have to accept RBTs into our school system, how do I account for the 160 RBTs that I now have to park at my school and use the bathroom at my school? And right, that there's so many additional people inside the school system now, because now everybody has a one-on-one RBT, right? Well, not everybody, but it's definitely grown exponentially from what it used to be. So a lot of parents are also opting into charter school and private schools, and then it gets even trickier because at that point, then the different principals and administrations are deciding whether or not they even allow private instructional personnel, because it's not like the public school system.
So my question is it easier to be in a public system or in a private sector?
Honestly, I think it really depends, because it varies so much based on who the teacher is, whether they're welcoming to you, whether or not they like your approach. Some will straight tell you, I don't believe in ABA. And I'm like, well, ABA is not something to not believe in. It's a science of behavior. So I'd love to teach you. I'd love to teach you, about it. But then sometimes it comes from the administration, and they'll say, well, you can come, but you can only come on Tuesdays from 11 to 1, or you can only come during lunchtime, or you can only, or sometimes the carriers, the funding source will be like, well, you can service them at school, but only during non-academic, non-instructional, non-academic times.
Yeah.
So then you're like, okay, well, I can pull them out during art class, or right, or PE or whatever. And then the parents are like, well, I want him to have art and PE. Yeah. And then it's like, okay, well then the school setting might not be the right place. But then the teachers are complaining because they can't attend. So it's like, it can be very tricky to kind of, you just feel like you're dodging rules and regulations at every which way you turn. And so it can definitely be tricky. But it's important at the end of the day to just try to service your client as best you can in the environment that's allowed and that's provided to you, and to always work in as collaborative a way as possible with the fellow teachers, instructors during the IEP meetings and the parents and whatnot. We're running out of time, but I definitely want to touch on some other locations, because I don't want to just like leave them out. But I want to touch on community and telehealth to kind of like end our talk here. Community as in, I don't know, maybe we can service a client at a grocery store, or at the movie theater, or at the neighborhood park. Again, wherever the child needs services is where we provide it. It might be a sensory situation that needs a little more attention, or it might be a social skills thing that the client otherwise wouldn't have like in the home setting, if that's the primary location where they're currently receiving care.
The most common thing one I've noticed is summer camp.
Yeah.
Summer camp has been like a big deal. The YMCA or Boys and Girls Club. Yeah. We would just go in there and just kind of work on programs while we're kind of, working on social interaction stuff as well. Also, when you mentioned grocery stores, those are mostly for kids that are a little bit more older, right? Or some kids that are younger and mom has a hard time, navigating through the store because that's the aisle they have to avoid because there's candy and we can't get candy kind of thing. So a lot more parent training, I say, like for the little ones to just kind of be used to being the outings with their parents. As well as, even going to the mall or mom running errands or the doctor office. Yeah. They're struggling at the doctor's office and they're throwing a tantrum and I'm always having issues. I can't go by myself. So we want the parents to be more confident and being able to, navigate what do I need to do before, what do I need to do during and after. So there's a lot more contact there that we work on. And for the high functioning kids that are like a little bit more older, like working on daily living skills, we worked on money, we worked on finding items in the store because when they get older, they're going to have to be able to shop for their own grocery store. Um, so it's just, kind of working on those daily living skills for those kiddos. Also, even sometimes play dates, they can be outside in the playground. We've been having a lot of those. There are a lot of ethical issues that go behind that with the RBT and the parents, where the BCB is not informed. There's situations I've encountered, but we can go and talk about ethics and all that another episode.
Yeah, that'll be a good
with
one.
the RBTs because there's a lot I've ran into in my career. But overall, we went over the community, now the telehealth. I would say I've noticed telehealth, it's common everywhere, but I feel like it's more common in rural areas that they have been underserved. There's not that much ABA therapy there or RBTs there, like Colorado, New Mexico, specific states like that, where RBTs will do one-to-one telehealth and the parents will either be involved or the kid is a little bit more able to sit there and, tolerate, the tasks that's required for their like one-to-one. So even with supervision, most of the times the BCBA could be out being sick and they can provide that telehealth or parent training. That's the most common one. A lot of parents don't want to be there in person or their availability is kind of off, like it doesn't work with your schedule. So I've found that telehealth has been working a lot with parent training.
Yeah.
Parents are more available. They're open to it and they're not uncomfortable, and their kids are not there while they're having it. Either they're at work and they're on their lunch break and they want to do telehealth, and so they feel more like comfortable and more focused. I feel like when you're at the home and you're talking to mom, hey, go get that milk over there, what's going on, like everything, there's too many things going on and you're not getting their full attention and you have to rush your parent training. And I'm just like, oh, we didn't really get much out of this. So I feel like it's more productive and effective to have more parent training and telehealth services. So
Yeah, telehealth has been working very well for even in multifamily groups, right? Which is something that we can do. Yeah, like you said, it works very well for the family, unless of course they need more kind of like hands-on guidance or you want to watch them doing something and you want to model something for them. Telehealth, generally speaking, has been working really, really well. But I guess we can wrap it up with that.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think we covered everything.
Yeah.
Well, coffee in hand, heart in the right place.
Follow us on social media. Reach out to us if you have any specific questions or topics in mind that you'd like for us to cover in the future. Till next time.
Bye.